Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me for this Friday's Lunch and Learn. Now today we're going to be talking about statistics and percentages. So I'm going to give you a moment to get some pencil and paper together if you want to take some notes. I'm not a great math person, but I do have a percentage calculator on my webpage, and so I want to see exactly what we are looking at, because oh my goodness, if you look at the news, you're going to think that we are all headed for certain destruction, right? And so we're going to be talking about some different things that go along with the news and what we are not being told, or maybe what we are being told, but how we need to interpret that, all right? So if you've got your pencils ready, I'm going to give you some statistics, and hopefully this will give you some perspective, because it's all about perspective. And remember, we talked about last week about fear mongering and how if you live in fear, you're going to be reducing the efficacy of your immune system, and it is only your immune system that helps keep you well, and this is what we want. This is what I have devoted my life to, is education, to keep you well, keep me well, keep my family well. And so we have to just keep everything in perspective. So take a guess at how many people we have in the planet, right? You don't have to guess, I'm going to tell you. 7.9 billion people, okay? So 7.9 billion people. So of that 7.9 billion people, what is the percentage of death rate that we've had with the current pandemic, right? Anybody hazard a guess? You don't have to guess, I'll tell you. 0.054%. That's a very low percentage rate of death on the planet due to the pandemic. So what we are looking at is draconian measures to thwart a virus that is having a fatality of 0.054%. Now, while I do understand that if you have lost someone in that 0.054%, and I have lost a very dear friend, and I have lost a very dear uncle. And so I understand the pain of loss and that kind of thing. But what we're looking at affects very, very few people. Of that 7.9 billion people, only 2%, let's say 2.5%, have contracted the virus. 2% of the population. That's a very small number. It's a very small number, right? So, and of the people that have contracted, 2% of the population that have contracted the virus, 2% of that 2%, it has been fatal. So you have to keep things in perspective. The news would have you understand that this is 90% of the population, or maybe even greater. The news would have you understand that you are very, very at risk. You're not very at risk if you don't have those comorbidities. So I want to talk to you about what's going on right now. What is in the news right now is the new Delta variation. What does that mean? That means as a virus comes into our atmosphere, it comes into our environment, the virus mutates, the virus replicates, and typically viruses become less virulent over time. So depending on what your age is, if you remember the Hong Kong flu, the first year it was pretty deadly. If you remember the SARS virus in the early 2000s, it was very deadly. We don't ever hear anything about it now, but you know what? It's still around. But it has mutated, and become weaker. So the scientists are saying with this Delta variant, the scientist says what we are seeing is virus evolution 101. This is basic stuff. This is stuff that we expect. A virus comes into our environment, it starts to mutate, and it gets weaker every mutation, all right? It says that the Delta variant is more transmissible, but it is not more deadly. And so that's what we need to know. It is not more deadly. It says, this is from the CDC on July the 27th, so that was last week. It issued an update on breakthrough infections, stating that they happen only in a small proportion of people that are fully vaccinated, even with the Delta variant. The CDC statement, however, stands in contrast to what the director of Israel Public Health Services told the CBS program Face the Nation on Sunday. The Israeli health minister said that it was affecting 50% of those fully vaccinated. So what does that tell us? That tells us that the current shot that's out there is not protecting against the current mutation. So this is important. And why is this important? Well, because we've talked about this before. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but you can go back and look through these videos and get the down and dirty details. But I'm just going to remind you that the jab that they're asking you to get actually turns your body into a spike protein factory, and it's those spike proteins that are making people sick, right? We know that with the virus, what makes us sick is the spike proteins, so we know that. I want to segue into a real life case study that we had come into the office this week. Now, this gentleman came in very healthy, never had a migraine. He's 40, mid-40s. Never had a migraine until in January he contracted the virus. Natural wild strain virus, got the virus. After that, one of the side effects was migraine headaches. And he's had migraine headaches, off and on since then. Well, due to family situations, he decided to get the jab, two doses. Since that, he has had a migraine almost nonstop. So much so that it paralyzed one side of his body, went into the doctor, went to the ER, they did all kinds of CAT scans, MRIs, all that kind of stuff, thinking that he had had a stroke. Did not have a stroke, does have some scar tissue in the brain, but does not have a stroke. So, still has this chronic migraine. They've given him some kind of injection to dull the pain, but obviously you can't live on that. So someone recommended that he come to see me. And as he's telling me this story, he's saying that his MD sent him to a neurologist to see what could happen. And so the neurologist says, we can't find anything wrong with you, so you just have this migraine. So the gentleman told the neurologist, look, never had a migraine, got the COVID virus, had a migraine, a couple of them, didn't have any more, got the vaccine, and I've had a chronic migraine, so much so that it paralyzes me. And he says, I think it is connected. And the neurologist said, I believe you're right. The patient said, so you're going to document that in my chart, right? The neurologist says, no, I'm not going to document that. And the patient said, so you're going to put me in some kind of a focus group or some kind of case study or some kind of whatever kind of trial you're going to run, right? And the neurologist said no. So this is what we're up against with the the jab, because what I think has happened is it has turned his body into the spike protein factory. And in his particular case, migraines are the way it presents. Now, I can't tell you that we've had great success with this. I only saw him this week. But hopefully, in about 30 days, he's going to call me and say, Dr. Polly, we're all good. That's my hope. That's my desire, right? But I can't tell you that right now. What I can tell you is that the neurologist, who is a specialist on the brain, said, yeah, you're probably right. It probably is a side effect, but I'm not going to document it because there's nothing I can do for you, right? So this is what we're up against, and this is, he was pressured by his family to go and do this medical intervention. We are all being pressured to do this. I heard the current president say in an appeal to both the Texas governor and the Florida governor to please issue mask mandates and social distancing because the cases are increasing, and he was blaming us. Well, the recent data I just saw today says that Florida has the least number of cases than any state in the union. That's what I read today. Now, does Texas have a lot of cases? Yes, Texas has a lot of cases. But remember, Texas has an open border, and the people that are coming over the border are not being vaccinated. They're not being tested because there's just too many of them. And so they probably, I don't have any statistics on that, okay? But if it is that Texas is leading on the cases, and I have not had time to check that out, but there would be another reason for that because we do have an open border. So they are saying that, the Israeli minister is saying that 50% of those fully vaccinated are having these cases. Now, there is a country called the Seychelles. Now, the Seychelles are actually a archipelago of 115 different islands in the Indian Ocean. So they are the most vaccinated country in the world, okay, according to this particular report that I have. The Seychelles are causing concern for the World Health experts after a rise in the COVID-19 cases among fully vaccinated individuals. All right. So these are the statistics as of this last Monday. All right. They have from the population, they have 8.45% of the cases, and of the full population, they've got 0.341% of deaths. The health ministry said that 37% of their new infections were in people who have already received both doses of the vaccine. All right, so that's really, really important. It's getting even worse. The statistics show 60% of the total population has been vaccinated, and we know we don't vaccinate children, right? 86% of the people who are in the group that can be vaccinated, the targeted vaccination group, 86% of the people have been fully vaccinated. So why are we doing vaccinations? We're doing vaccinations in order to not get the disease. And what we're finding that what we are seeing is that you can get all the vaccinations you want, and this thing just comes on through anyway. It's breakthrough anyway. And so this is what you have to weigh up for yourself, the benefit risk of getting the virus, the natural virus, or getting the shot. Personally, and my statistics are, of the 7.9 billion people, 0.054% of the people get the virus. I'm probably not going to get it. So I'm not worried about it. I'm just telling you, I'm not worried about it. And I certainly don't want to sacrifice my health on getting an experimental procedure when the risk of me getting a virus that is probably not going to be a big deal for me because I don't have any of the comorbidities. Now, if you've got comorbidities, if you are overweight, if you have lung issues, if you have cardiovascular issues, if you have diabetes, then you are more at risk. If you're older with those comorbidities, you are more at risk. Okay, I am not at risk. Most people are not at risk. So, the WHO repeatedly says that vaccination alone would not be enough to stop the pandemic, but rather is another weapon in the arsenal to fight the virus. Now, they tell you that your weapons are social distancing. They tell you that your weapons are the vaccine. They tell you that your weapons are a mask. What they don't tell you is that your weapons are vitamin C and vitamin D and zinc and even tonic water, right? Quinine and tonic water is very, very effective at protecting you. And so they're not telling you those things that are very easily available at your local health food store, at your local grocery store even, right? I mean, they're not going to have the quality of brands that you're going to get from me, but you're going to have something, and something is better than nothing. They are saying that restrictions on social contact as well as good personal hygiene are still seen as the basis of preventing the spread. Now, we know, because we've talked about this, and I've given you the statistics and the research in previous episodes here, that wearing a mask reduces the strength of your own immune system. And so social distancing also reduces the efficacy of your immune system. Why is that? Because our immune system is always learning. Our immune system is always adapting. So when I am with you, when we are sharing air, when we are sharing touch, your skin microbiome picks up what I put on you. My skin microbiome picks up what you put on me through a hug, through a kiss, whatever. Just sharing the air. I'm picking up stuff, you're picking up stuff. The immune system says, oh, this stuff does not belong to her. We're going to mount a defense against this. When I am social distanced, when I am masked, number one, I'm breathing back my own carbon dioxide, which has bacteria and mold. Certainly, if you live down here on the coast, the southern coast, the Gulf Coast of Texas, where I live, mold is rampant here. Why? Because we have 100% humidity most days, and so it is a breeding ground for mold. Now, am I worried about it? No, I'm not worried about it. I've got stuff in my house that keeps mold down. I take care of myself, and my immune system is really, really strong. So what they're saying is that you want to be masked up in public and that kind of thing. Now, what we're seeing is that Europe and the United States, right, they're all coming against, and they're having all kinds of revolts and protests against what's going on in the world. And so I just kind of wanted to give you some information on this as well, because we are fast losing our freedoms. There are companies here in the United States, big companies. Let me see if I can find that real quick. I'm getting out of my order, but I'm kind of just winging it here, okay? Companies such as Google, Facebook, Morgan Stanley, Ascension Health, the Washington Post, Saks Fifth Avenue, Lyft, Uber, Walmart, and Disney have already mandated that employees get the jab to continue working for those companies. On July the 30th, Broadway theaters announced that all members of the audience, okay, would be required to show proof of having the jab and must keep a mask on at all times. All right, so that's just crazy. Why, if I'm going to have to wear a mask anyway, why am I going to put my body further at jeopardy? Just throwing that out there. On July the 26th, the nation's largest healthcare worker union, the United Healthcare Workers, demonstrated in New York City against. Now, these are the United Healthcare Workers. These are our frontline heroes. All last year, we were applauding them. We were loving on them. We were saying how great they were. They were in the front line, in the hospitals, in the ER, in the ICU, all that place, with no jab, right? They had their personal protection. They worked long hours. They really went above and beyond, and I applaud all of those that did that for real. But this union is coming out against the forced vaccination. So far, COVID-19 vaccine mandates as a condition of employment is also opposed by the United Postal Workers Union, the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, and the United Auto Workers. So yay for them. You know, we need to, all of us, I mean, we live in the great state of Texas. I am so proud of our governor for saying we are not going to be shut down. We are not going to have mask mandates. We are not going to have vaccine passports. I am so proud of him for doing that. But yet, in our own local municipality in the Houston area, they are calling for all of those things. Now, I don't know how a local municipality can go against what the governor says, but apparently they can. Part of what I'm doing is to protect myself, I'm not getting into the fear on the news. So I'm not really watching the news all that much. Why is that? Because I just, I get very irritated and I lose my peace over it. And if I lose my peace over it, then I'm going to be stressed. And if I'm going to be stressed, my immune system's going to be weakened. And so I don't want to do that. So part of my self-care is I don't have the TV on the news all the time. And as I've told you before, I'm an absolute news junkie. I love the news. I just love the news, but I'm not watching it. So the states, there are 21 states, hallelujah. Out of 50 states, we have 21 states that are pushing back against federal mandates. So I'm really, really appreciative of that. I am hoping that more and more states, as the statistics come out, we're going to see that the states that are healthy are the ones that don't have the shutdowns. Now, I'm going to look at something on my screen. It just came out, so I haven't researched this, but this is the Cliff Notes version, right, or the headline version. Okay, so this is, let me see, did it change? Did my screen change? Yes, my screen changed. So that's not going to be helpful. Oh, here we go. Okay, let me go back to this one. This is what I wanted to tell you. So this is the Cliff Notes version. So the story at a glance, all right? John Tierney, who is a reporter for the New York Times, looked back over the pandemic, giving us a timeline of media-induced viral panic, right? Media-induced. That means the media is propagating this. The media is doing this. Led to censorship and suppression of scientific research regarding the current virus here. Experts who spoke against the official narrative were attacked and accused of endangering the lives by questioning the lockdowns. Numerous research journals refused to publish the results of scientific studies that featured data questioning lockdowns, mask mandates, and other COVID policies. Certain states have stood out for their refusal to buy into the draconian public health measures that were adopted throughout the U.S. Florida, chief among them, and Florida has a COVID mortality rate that is lower than the national average. The crisis, or the incessant state of alarm fomented by journalists and politicians, is one reason why so many government, academic, and policy leaders could support rampant censorship, suppression of scientific data for so long, all the while propagating the pandemic. So what does that mean? That means the people that are telling you on the television and the radio to follow the science aren't following the science. And so what we need to do is you need to look on your computer. Don't Google it, because Google is part of the suppression. You want to use a different browser, maybe Safari, maybe DuckDuckGo. There are other ones I'm sure that I'm just not familiar with. But if you look on those sites, you're going to get that research that has been submitted to journals that is just not being put out there. You've got your frontline doctors that are saying things totally different than what the CDC is saying. And so what is the motivation? We always have to ask, what is the motivation? The motivation is to sell vaccines. Why is that? Because the people that make the vaccines get $400 per jab, and so you have to follow the money. What is the percentage of that? I don't know, because I haven't researched this, but I'm sure that information is out there. If the Seychelles is 86% fully vaccinated, the United States is 50% fully vaccinated, right? So you take the population, you figure out what is the target population, vaccination population, so everybody above 18, right? What is that? You can Google that because that's out there. Of that, how many people are fully vaccinated? 50%. How many dollars is that? That's a lot of dollars. earlier, back in, I think, September, we talked about, almost a year ago, we talked about the fact that the heads, the CEOs of these drug companies that are making this experimental vaccine, they are making over $1 million a week. Hello, that's a lot of dollars. That is a lot of dollars. So fortunately, people are standing up, and I want to stand up, and I want you to stand up. In Australia, now Australia is a big country, but it does not have a huge population. They've got about 25 million people. I think the United States has like 350 million people, so we've got a lot more people than they do. But in their country, they are on lockdown, and the police are coming after them. According to what I am reading here, they have a 30-day rigid social distancing restriction that was enacted recently. The Australians gathered in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane on July the 24th to protest the lockdowns. Social distancing regulations have been imposed, including compulsory masking in all indoor, non-personal residence settings. Most schools were closed. There are restrictions on how far you can travel from your home. There's no going to work except for essential employees, and they must be tested for COVID every 3 days. Exercise and social gathering outside, you can only go in groups of 2. Funerals are limited to only 10 people. Weddings are totally banned, and other limits of person-on-person social interaction are imposed. Now, the UK Daily Mail reported that all of this vulgar language, I'm not going to read that to you. This is what the protesters are saying. We don't want to be locked down. We don't want to follow these mandates. All right, so they climbed on the roof of the Woolworths store. They gathered around the town hall, and they were being peaceful. But the mounted police told the demonstrators to disperse or they would be peppered spray. Some broke through the police barrier, threw plastic bottles and plants at the officers. Now, we do not condone that. There's no reason for that, all right? The New South Wales police have developed a strike force to go after these people, right? Kind of like our January 6th commission, right? They're going after people that protested, and that's not great. Now, they did this after 0.00478 people became infected of their population. They're in the city of about 5 million people, right? The amount of people that were infected is 0.00478. So there's a whole lot of this over nothing. I mean, get the perspective there, okay? In Britain, they are rioting. They are protesting. I don't know if you've seen that on the television, okay? But on July 19th, the British government lifted the COVID-19 lockdown that had been in place for over a year, all right? The public demands live debate. Science is not science without discussion, and I firmly agree with that. And why is that? Because science changes every day. What you think is science, you're going to have a new discovery, you're going to have a new something, and you're going to find that you need to rethink your hypothesis. You need to rethink. Science is only science when it is repeatable. All right, you can predict the outcome because it is repeatable. Google the scientific formula. You can't have it this way one day, this way another day. And so all of the flip-flopping going on with our political leaders should tell you something. So the United Kingdom, which has a population of 57 million, ranks in the top 20 most vaccinated nations with the adult vaccination rate over 57%. Paris, all right, which of course we know is in France, saw tens of thousands of people taking to the street on National World Freedom Day, okay, to protest against all of their draconian measures. They say the blackmail of caregivers who were at the front lines during the first wave and are now threatened with no more pay and even being fired because they don't want to take the jab. They're coming out in support of the healthcare workers, just like here in the United States. The healthcare workers in Paris don't want to subject themselves to that. So this is just it's worldwide that's going on here. 2 days after that protest, the French Parliament voted to pass a law that will take effect this week. They all came out again. They protested again. There were another 150 protest events that took place in cities around France. France has a population of 67 million with an estimated vaccine rate of 4.5% or more. Italy says, no, we're not doing that. Their law states, or they're wanting it to be, all right, it's an extension of the Green Pass. The Green Pass will be required to enter cinemas, museums, indoor swimming pools, sports arenas, or eat indoors at restaurants, proving that the person has been vaccinated, has had a recent negative COVID-19 test, or has recovered from the infection. There were 80 cities that protested. Italy has 60 million people with 52% vaccination rate, right? The Greek police, right? We're talking about Greece. Greece has 11 million people, and they have 45% vaccinated. The Greek police used tear gas and water cannons to disperse the demonstrations that were going on against these measures. So, oh my gosh, can you see that happening here in the United States? I sure hope not. But this is what is happening around the world. Germany had some protests, and let's see what it says. On August the 1st, that was just this week, I guess last week, tens of thousands of citizens marched on the streets of Berlin to protest the lockdowns that have restricted dining indoors at restaurants or staying in a hotel, and the requirements to provide proof of the vaccination, defying a ban by Germany's lower and upper administrative courts on public demonstrations. All right. Berlin's police department deployed more than 2,000 officers with batons, pepper spray, and water cannons as the crowd made their way to Berlin's Charlottenburg, I know I didn't say that right, neighborhood, all right? Germany has 83 million people, and 52% have been fully vaccinated. At least, I'm going to leave you with this because I've gone over, sorry. At least 83 governments worldwide have used the COVID-19 pandemic to justify violating the exercise of free speech and peaceful assembly. Authorities have attacked, detained, prosecuted, and in some cases killed critics, broken up peaceful protests, closed media outlets, and enacted vague laws criminalizing speech that they claim threatens public health. Victims include journalists, activists, healthcare workers, political opposition groups, and others who have criticized government response to the pandemic. Governments and other state authorities should immediately end excessive restrictions on free speech in the name of preventing the spread. Now, this is from the Human Rights Watch. So, what do we need to do? We need to do our own research. We need to discern what is behind this. If this virus, right, the fatality rate is 0.054%. That's a very small percent. Yes, it touched me. Yes, it has touched most of you. It has. It has. But it's a very small percent. What we know from looking at the statistics last year is that the number of deaths from heart disease is down, number of deaths from diabetes is down, number of deaths from all the comorbidities, right, is down. Why? Because it's not being reported. Why? Because everything is reported to be exaggerated so we keep this fear-mongering going. We probably will talk about a little bit about that next time. So I know there's been a lot of comments. A lot of people are watching this. I appreciate it. I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the share. It's the weekend, so what do I always say? Go do self-care. Get your sunshine, get your hugs, get your loves, get all that going, because that is what is going to improve and enhance your immune system. I love you guys. Thank you so much for all you do for me, for sharing and commenting. I appreciate you, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.